Hi, I'm Cynthia. I'm the author of Embodying the Goddess, How to Awaken Curiosity and Reverence on the Spiritual Path. I want to talk about non-duality. Non-duality is the philosophy that says, I am not separate from the divine. There's not two things, non-dual, not dual, not two, not two. What's not two? One. Whatever is one thing, that there is one consciousness or one field of awareness or one essential nature. Within the different schools of non-duality, and the main ones that we can look at would be Buddhism, is a fundamental school of logic-based non-duality that wants to systematically take out our illusion and our conditioning and to really bring us away from anything that changes into this spontaneously arising ground of beingness. Another major school of non-duality is Advaita Vedanta. In Advaita Vedanta, we similarly have this very critical, very logic-driven system that also challenges anything that is of the nature of illusion. So if there's an aspect of us, if there is something in us that can change from moment to moment, then we can't really say, that's me. Can you say that the thought you had 5 minutes ago is you? We change our mind all the time. So we can't cling our identity to something as movable, as changeable as a thought or an emotion. These things come and go. The body also, it changes. I have a different body that I had when I was 5 or that I'll have when I'm 80. And so everything is constantly changing in this wild and beautiful and strange world, including thoughts, emotions, sensations, perceptions, form, and memories. So in Buddhism, the non-duality that many of the schools come to, or most of the schools come to, say that once we strip away all of the things that change, that are subject to growth and decay, for example, then we're left with this spontaneously arising ground of freedom. And this spontaneously arising ground of freedom just happens to create this dream-like reality. And sometimes we are playing and engaging in this dream-like reality. And sometimes we can have moments of clarity of seeing, I am nothing that changes. I am the ground. I am the ground from which arises and subsides all the things that I take to be real, and hence the world. It might seem real in moments, but it's not fundamentally real. It's not that the world itself is unreal. It's that it's more like a dream. And if you've ever had a dream and woken up from the dream and realized, oh my goodness, that felt so real to me. My character in the dream felt so real to me. Then when we wake up from the dream, we realize, oh, that was a dream. It's very obvious. It's very clear. That was contained, in my imagination. And Buddhism really takes this and builds it into a beautiful and logical series of systems that show us through practice the unreal nature, or the dream-like nature, let's say, of reality. But at the core of that, so when we get to the question of then what is real, what am I, you have this kind of refusal to stick something on that. It's not a ground that Buddhists are ever really going to be comfortable saying, well, here's what we can name it. Here's how we can describe it. Because if you try to describe it, if you try to describe the ground, then it's like water on oil. It's gonna roll off. It's gonna resist. This ground of our being that's constantly arising is gonna resist our attempts to describe it. Advaita Vedanta is very similar to Buddhism in a lot of really key and critical ways, except that in Advaita Vedanta, this illusion has a little bit more let's say, consistency to it. There's a little more awareness around this concept called Brahman. Brahman being the infinite and eternal nature that I am. One of the key references to Advaita Vedanta is in sacred scripture. And so sacred scripture is extremely important in Advaita Vedanta because they say, hey, look at this sacred text, and if you read it, you'll see that what it says is you are consciousness. And this word Brahman comes out of these sacred scriptures, especially the Upanishads. Buddhism does not refer to sacred scriptures at all. Buddhism says, nope, we are not going to rely on sacred scriptures to give us any information. We can only rely on ourselves. Advaita Vedanta says, no, you can rely on sacred scripture to reveal to you the truth of your nature. That is, you are free consciousness, and the illusion of all of the dreamlike qualities that you are can be explained by referring back to these scriptures. Now, having said that, in Advaita Vedanta, there are different ways that we can start to cleanse the palate and bring ourselves into this non-dual realization, this non-dual transcendent or transcendental realization that I am not. I am not all the things that I have so far in my life taken myself to be. And one of those ways, because of studying with scripture, because of relying on the wisdom of these wisdom texts, would be a kind of devotion to the text. You have to have faith in the text. You have to have some kind of devotion in the truth of the text. You have to suspend your disbelief for a moment to say, well, okay, I don't quite yet know the direct reality of my nature, but I'm going to believe what the sacred scriptures have to tell me until I get to that direct realization of my own essential nature as Brahman. So Advaita Vedanta has a little more allowance in its non-duality for relying on an intermediary, and that intermediary being sacred scripture and sacred text. Buddhism does not want us to rely on anything external because the world is arising as a dream. It's arising spontaneously. And of course, you're not gonna read a book to show you the reality of your nature. You just have to turn your attention inward, do practice, and meditate. Okay, now let's talk about Tantric non-duality. And this is why I love the goddess so much. This is why I fell in love with the goddess and the divine feminine, is because both Buddhism and Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, are transcendent pathways, and they build these extraordinary teaching mechanisms and practice tools to name the ladder that brings us to transcendence, and then they climb us up that ladder. And then with a wink and a nod and a title, they say, now you've understood. And that title is Samadhi, or that title is Nirodha, the snuffing out of the flame, the snuffing out. Or that title is enlightenment, is typically what we call that. Enlightenment is when you realize directly, oh, I am not the stuff that moves, I'm the thing that doesn't move, which is called different things, but usually called something like consciousness or absolute truth. Now, those two systems, like I just said, take us up to transcendence, and then they drop us off at the gate. They drop us off at the door. Tantra, non-dual Tantra, started in the goddess traditions. It started probably in the school of Krama, which is a Kali-based system. In the 500s, 600s of the Common Era, you started to get these texts coming out. And some of them were looking at the sequence of how consciousness does this. It's like a reverse engineering of the transcendent state. Okay, so if there's a transcendent state, then how does it sequence itself into whatever this crazy anxiety-ridden little beast of a thing that my lived experience shows me. Maybe that's just me, but we tend to have these crazy, limited, anxiety-ridden lives. So how did the infinite, that is me, these schools are telling me that's me, come to be so limited and bound? So Tantra starts to kind of reverse engineer that and show us how this happens. Now, in these goddess traditions, in these early goddess traditions, you have images of the divine feminine as Shakti. And what is Shakti? Shakti is power. Now, power can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And I don't really need to go much further than saying that, because I think you understand exactly what I mean. Power can be good and power can be bad. So the goddess in the Tantric worldview is a little ambivalent. Like, she is power itself, which sometimes we can propitiate and sometimes really messes us up. In Krama, she's described as the void at the center of our being. And like the sun, she has these rays, these burning rays that go outward, and they create all things. And as they create all things, they also absorb all things. But essentially, don't forget, we're talking about power. So the non-dual systems start to talk about, okay, so what is the nature of this power? If there's this transcendent ground of being, and there's power radiating out of it to create this limited being that's me, well, clearly I'm a really compacted and condensed version of that power, because I don't feel very powerful. I don't feel very infinite. I feel contracted. This is what Tantra agrees. Yes, we are a contracted form of that power. And in those non-dualities, where Krama gives way to Spanda, the schools of Spanda. Spanda means pulsation, or the bursting forth, the throb. That's one definition that I recently read in a translation of the Spanda Karika, as the throb of reality. And throb being power. So Spanda is power, power is the wave. And a wave or a pulsation is this, right? I'm just going to show you. It's what I just did. That's a wave, but it's also this. The same thing, right? This is the heartbeat. If you look at an echocardiogram of a heartbeat, it's also this, okay? So we're talking about pulsation. We're talking about expanding and contracting, expanding, contract, expand, contract. In the non-dual tantras, they recognize that there is a transcendent state and that it's extremely important for us to have a realization that brings us to that transcendent state. Yes, they say, it is true that what we are is consciousness. But Tantra doesn't drop us off at the door of the transcendent and say, okay, you're good, you're enlightened now, and then leave us there. Tantra also is really interested in doing this backsies and forthsies thing. It goes back and forth. So, okay, I'm transcendent, but I'm also the contracted and condensed. Now, if you pay attention to reality, to your reality, because there's no one else's reality, there's only yours. And this is not a solipsism, very important. If you pay attention to your reality, your heart, which is part of the universal heart, you are expanding all the time into transcendence. There are so many more moments in the day than you give credit where you're not thinking anything. where maybe that's why you like to go for road trips. You like to drive in your car because you go into that spaced out kind of like everything fades outward. It's the reason people do drugs, honestly. It is the reason people try to escape the compressed or condensed aspects of their personality. There are beautiful forms of this. There's exercise, gets us into what some people used to call the zone. But we have these experiences all the time of a loosening of the grip, or like a loosening of the jar lid on our identifications. Like, I'm identified so much with whatever thought is coming through, and thought is just so convincing. Every thought you've ever had is extremely urgent. It's like, pay attention to me right now. Even if that thought is like, oh, did I buy enough paper for my kid at the store? Did I get the right school supplies? It's an urgent thought the second it comes in, even if it is not an urgent thought. Thought has this convincing quality. It's a thief, really. It's a thief because it comes in and it just grabs everything. It grabs everything that it can grab about us. So thought, emotion, sensation, perception, memory, these are all different forms. Now, they're different forms of power, right? So we can have experiences of the transcendent all the time. They're not that special. It's not that special to have a moment where you're big. You're really big. Meditation might give you that. Ritual is designed to be a space that invokes bigness, that invokes an opening. And the more you do ritual, the more of, like, let's say, a conditioned response you can have to that spaciousness. So you can condition yourself into momentary drips, like a little drip, 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 a little IV drip of vitamin enlightenment through ritualization. That's really the point of doing devotional ritual. Advaita Vedanta recognizes this, by the way, which is why devotion and bhakti are part of the system. It primes you to open up your awareness. So too are we contracting all the time. Now, Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta do a terrible job, honestly, of describing and naming and mapping contraction. So, and some of you in the comments are going to get really mad because you are totally devoted to this system, which means you're conditioned. But just ask yourself for a moment, does this system give me a solid map of how I'm contracting? No, because it doesn't care that you're contracting. Those non-dualities don't really pay much attention to your contracting. They say, yeah, it's unreal. Once you see that it's unreal, you never need to worry again about contracting, because contracting is unreal. Now, this is where the non-duality of Tantra disagrees, because the non-duality of Tantra says expanding into total consciousness is real, and so too is contracting, right? Because the ground of stillness pulsates, and pulsation is simultaneously the ground of stillness. That's a paradox, but it's a paradox we have to get used to in non-duality. If we can track the way that we condense again and again and again, that moment you're driving in the car and you snap back into a thought, or you snap into a memory. Now, you might pass a million oak trees and have no trauma around an oak tree, or have no memory associated with an oak tree, so that does nothing for you while you're driving. But then you see a pine tree Just giving an example here. And that pine tree spurs a memory. And now all of a sudden you've cascaded, you've contracted back your awareness into a memory. All because you came across some brush against reality that contracted you back in. Now you can actually start to track your contracting. The power of condensation is considered very sacred in these goddess-based non-dualities. So the krama, the spanda, pratyabhijna, which is the school of recognition, and the trika, these are all systems that include pulsation at a very high level, and that say, track the pulsation that is your alive and lived and non-dual nature. Okay, I'm going to go back again. In Advaita Vedanta and in Buddhism, you do practices to reach the goal. Once you've reached the goal, you're good. Like, there's nothing more to say. This is ultimate truth, and we see this all over the place where mostly people are just parroting what they've heard. They haven't actually done the work to sit down with it. So they've gotten pretty dogmatic about it, which is hilarious and sad, because people will say, well, all that exists is ultimate truth. And then they'll get mad at you. Like, why are you even doing those practices? It's not even real. It's just, everything is Brahman or whatever it is, their dogma, their conditioned belief is telling you, and now they really want you to believe it too because they have an identity around it. I hope you can appreciate just how horrifying really that concept is. To get conditioned into a belief in non-duality is like the ultimate spiritual trap. It's like the top level ego trap that we can fall into, which is to have a belief around these systems and the effectiveness of these systems. Is because what are you believing? You're believing in a thought, which you're supposed to have seen through. So in those systems, devotion and ritual help to peel away or create the conditions in the dream to wake you up. It's kind of like, hey, you're asleep, but I'm going to send somebody to tap on your shoulder, you sleeping little thing. And that ritual is like a tap on the shoulder again and again, and eventually it'll wake you up. Now, in Tantric non-dualities, devotion is not the means to the goal. It's not the thing that drops you off into ultimate truth. It's the goal itself. I'm talking especially about Utpaladeva's non-duality, and I'm partial to Utpaladeva. I love him. So I'll say that he has a very advanced system in Pratyabhijna, and Abhinavagupta being in the same school, and Kshemaraja, these teachers, really talk about devotion being the thing that's left over in consciousness. So devotion is not a non-dual means to realize. It's the thing that happens. It's the blossoming of the flower that happens once you've realized. Why? Because this is so elegant. Because if everything is the meeting place of the great heart, and the heart is the representative for pulsation, because first of all, because we dive our consciousness into our hearts, because we know that the heart has a heartbeat, because there's something inside of us that feels so powerfully alive. It's power itself. It's liquid. It is condensation. It is emanation. It is love. It is emotionality. It is creativity. It's the power of creation. So the power of creation to burst itself forth. Devotion has an attitude of welcoming, of being okay. Devotion, and Utpaladeva says this in his Shiva Strotavali, he says, let me, like other people, believe in the objects of the world. That is, let me be deluded by the delusion. Let me be separate. Let me, like other people, believe in the objects of the world. I don't really care. But let me never forget my devotion to you, Shiva, to you, O all-encompassing, full and complete being. Shiva being Shiva and Shakti. Shiva being the ground and transcendent reality that also pulsates. So you could also say that his philosophy is deeply informed by Krama. I mean, really uses the map of Krama to then describe this entire devotional non-duality. And it's extremely important that the ground of consciousness in Tantric non-duality is, it's not a spontaneously arising nothingness that the Buddhists describe, this kind of spontaneous field of dream producing little snow flurries. It's not Brahman, this concept of consciousness, pure consciousness. It's theistic, it's God. And that's different. God is different because God is something. God is not nothing. We could have a whole conversation about this word nothing, because Buddhists might say, ho ho. Actually, when we say nothing, we mean something. We mean fullness and somethingness. But still, they're going to tell you that it's spontaneously arising and everything's an illusion. But in this extremely theistic forward non-duality of Shaivism, and it's called Shaivism because Shiva is the name for that non-duality. What is Shiva? The heart. Your heart. Your heart and the universal heart. So then we actually have a lot of agency, and this word agency is extremely important in Tantra because agency, Aishwarya, agency is our ability, the fundamental ability that I have to investigate my heart and to dive, to plunge so deeply into the investigation of my heart that it reveals my divine nature, which is capital H heart. So it's like you need the lowercase h heart, which is the individual heart. It's the doorway to the capital H heart, to the universal heart, the throb of reality, the spanda, the throb of pulsation. Power is sacred in these systems because power is the power to condense. And the power to condense is the means that we need for the lowercase h heart. The heart reveals itself by the heart, says Abhinavagupta. The lowercase heart reveals the capital H heart. Power is our power, our sovereign power. We don't need to go crawling on our hands and knees to the king. We don't need to thrash the body to find a state of heaven. We don't need to let it all go, let it go spirituality. In Buddhism, you let it go. In Vedanta, you let it go. In Tantra, you amplify and you track power and you track pulsation and you engage with power and you engage with sovereignty at the heart. Because God is both transcendent and immanent, and if God is the entire field, then it doesn't matter if you're dualistic or non-dualistic, it's totally irrelevant. But what is relevant is whether you're devoted or not, because devotion is the key that unlocks the heart, that reveals God to herself.